this is Nick and Gia. We are currently in Bangkok and we just got back from our layover in Tokyo.
After about 14-15 hours, we landed in Tokyo Haneda Airport and we were let off the plane. We went through immigration and then we had to figure out how we were going to actually go about getting to the city. Online, I did a lot of research about this and everything said that the subway would be super easy, but we actually ran into a couple of problems that I think are important to be aware of if you're traveling yourself to Tokyo. Before you leave the United States, you're going to want to download your Suica card and you have to use a MasterCard to load it up with money. Visas don't work for some reason.
When we got to the subway station, we found out the hard way that you can't just have one person with a Suica card. I think everyone in your party needs to have one. Because we had imagined that you could just use the one Suica card and then pay for each stop. But the way that it works is you scan your card and then it tracks where you get off and then it will let you through. So we found ourselves stuck in a situation where Nick was on the other side of the
barricade, yeah.
The barricade or the turnstiles, whatever, and I was on the other side and we tried scanning and each time it wouldn't work. You definitely either need to buy your ticket from the ticket stand or you need to have two Suica individual cards.
Right. So after figuring out the metro, we ended up in Shinjuku district and we had a problem where we had some luggage because we were going to Thailand for a month and we didn't know what to do with it because we didn't have a hotel.
The nice thing about the Tokyo stations, I think, which separate it from other stations, is that they have lockers that you can store your luggage in, and you can store it, I think, for a few days.
So you get, I think it's 700 yen you get charged per night in the station, which is kind of high, but it's not like ridiculous. But one thing to note with that is we put our luggage in at like 11:50 p.m. You get charged for the whole day no matter when you put it in. And so we put it in at 11:50 p.m. and took it out at like 9 a.m. the next morning and we got charged for 2 full days despite only using it for like 6 or 7 hours. So if you're near that cutoff time, it might be useful to wait until it's like 12:01. At this point we're out of the train station. We have maybe 19 or 18 hours remaining and we were in Shinjuku and absolutely starving.
We knew that we wanted our first meal to either be ramen or sushi. And we stumbled across a really amazing ramen spot in Shinjuku. It was packed full of people. It's like, it had that like traditional style where it was like super small and skinny and you kind of had to shimmy your way through
elbow to elbow with everybody the whole way in.
Right, and we decided to get a super spicy ramen.
Yeah, it was very, very spicy, but it was very good. Probably the best ramen I've ever had. We each got a huge bowl of it, and I think combined it was like $13 total, which I didn't think was bad at all.
After we got our ramen, we knew that we wanted to hit a bar, but I don't think like we really necessarily wanted to go clubbing. Right. So we found ourselves in a super kind of, I guess it was a very touristy bar, I think. It was kind of catered towards foreigners. The menu was in English, wasn't it?
I think they had an English and a Japanese menu, but I think they definitely gave us a menu in English. And the prices were quite a bit higher than other places, but it was really cool. And they had craft beer there, and that was kind of what I was looking to try, and so I ended up getting this, it was like a yuzu-infused beer that was brewed locally in Shinjuku. And then after we got out of that bar, we started to walk around a little bit more, and this is when it just started raining horribly. So we were just wandering all around Shinjuku, all around the outskirts of Shibuya, in this just terrible rainstorm, and honestly it was a little bit uncomfortable. We started to wish that we would have got a hotel, so that's something to think about if you're going. Either maybe sleep at the airport a little bit in one of their capsules, or go to a hotel.
We walked past Piss Alley.
Oh yeah, Piss Alley was one of the coolest places that we went in all of Tokyo. But it closed down a lot earlier than you would think. I mean, we were there on a Monday, but in my head it was like, it's Tokyo, it's like a very international city. I thought it'd be 24 hours, and it wasn't at all. And so we got to see it, we took pictures, but we didn't get to really eat or go to any of the bars, which was a real shame.
We were hoping to at least find something to eat at that point because we were still hungry.
So we started to head back to like the main area where the metro is in Shinjuku because we knew it opened up at about 5 a.m. and we knew we wanted to get on it on that first train out. And so we started to head back to Shinjuku, and we found this cool little izakaya. I think it was called like Toratoshi or something like that. And honestly, we ended up kind of getting scammed here. We stopped in and we ordered some sushi. We sat down at the table. Everything was great. We ordered some sushi and some waters. Our server went away. A couple minutes later, a different server came and said that we both had to order alcohol. And we said we didn't really want any alcohol because it was like 4:30 a.m. and we just didn't want to be drunk in the morning. And she said that we had to leave if we didn't get the alcohol. And so I was a little surprised by that because the restaurant was completely empty.
Right.
Maybe one or two people were there. And so I just said, okay, then we'll leave. We'll take our food to go. And she was like, okay. They started to wrap it up in containers. About half of it was wrapped up. And then she was like, actually, no, you can't we don't do to-goes, despite standing right next to a bunch of takeaway containers. And then she threw all of our food away. And
right in front of us.
And then asked me to pay for it. I said no on that. And then eventually she started arguing in Japanese with some of her coworkers. And they settled on this like table charge fee because they put these like pickled beans or something. I don't know what they were.
They were like, it's like the complimentary food that restaurants give you when you first sit down. It's the equivalent of like Red Lobster giving you like the cheddar biscuits or whatever.
Yeah, or like how like at Korean places they'll give you like the potato salad and the kimchi.
Right.
Maybe even a little bit smaller than that because it was just like 5 or 6 little pickled beans. And Gia had a couple of those, and they were like, you have to pay for them. And I was like, this is a little ridiculous, but okay, fine, whatever, I'll pay for them. And they ended up trying to charge like I think it was like $6 or $7 a person for these. I didn't have anything, and she had a couple of the beans, and I was just like, can we just have my food to go? Like that's all I want. I want to pay for it. But they wouldn't, and then they made us pay this like crazy fee, which I could tell wasn't real because they had this like POS machine that has all the options, and they had to like add a different option. So clearly it wasn't something that was posted or part of their system because we watched her type it in. That's something to be aware of if you're in Shinjuku. Maybe ask before you sit down. Do I have to drink here?
Right.
Because like I mean I think it's pretty reasonable to not want to drink. But we noticed that maybe that's a thing that's all over the place, or maybe it's just this one place. After that, we headed out of the izakaya, still a little bit hungry and a little disappointed, and headed back towards the metro. And one thing that really, really stood out to us was that Shinjuku is not as clean as like the reputation that Tokyo has. It felt very, very safe, I think it's important to say. But there was drunk people all over the place, and not just like tipsy. Like, don't you think they were like, it was like almost alcohol poisoning.
I would consider it as alcohol poisoning. I mean, like, you would walk down the street and there's like at least 5 different people on the same road, like unconscious. And there's like, we even passed like other groups of like young people that would like kind of like check on the people on the side of the road just to like, I guess, see if there's a pulse or like if they're breathing.
Right.
And it was a little bit like worrisome, like seeing people like that on the side of the road. They had a bunch of like EMS people or EMTs like walking through the neighborhood of Shinjuku, and they were kind of sweeping the streets basically to make sure like people were okay.
It seemed like a very regular occurrence. Like it seemed like this is what they do every day. I mean, we walked past this one kid. He had no pants on, no underwear, like maybe between 17 and 23, and just covered in feces and couldn't speak. A security guard or like a EMT or somebody came up to him, was shaking him, no response. Well, I have no idea what happened to him, but it was very, very like kind of uncomfortable to be around.
Eye-opening for sure.
Yeah, but it wasn't anything like what you'd expect like in American big cities, because it still felt incredibly safe. Like these people would be blackout drunk, stumbling around you. Nobody said a word to us. Nobody acted uncomfortable. No catcalling. Nothing at all. Just kind of makes you a little bit worried about like the safety of it, and that they do this just every single night there. And then after that, though, the metro opened up, and we decided that we were going to head to Tsukiji Fish Market, which was on the other side of town. And so we got the first train on the metro, and that was an experience in itself, being on the very first train from the party district.
Right. The first train is filled with everyone that kind of got stuck in the bar district.
Right, because it stops at midnight.
Yeah. So, like, there were a few trains that we ran into that had, you know, vomit on the subway. There was
covered in vomit, yeah.
Nobody really bothers you on the subway.
Not at all. Yeah.
Even when they're, like, hungover or, like, trying to get back home, whatever, from the bar district or a long night out.
And they don't sell you anything. Like in Chicago or
Right.
Mexico City, they'll try to sell you cigarettes or things like that. None of that happens in Japan.
Mm-hmm. But, like, there was, like, vomit on the first train back. There were people that were kind of spilling their beer on the floor a little bit. And, of course, like, there was tons of people that were, like, in business suits. Like, they were getting their day started, and they kind of just, you know, navigated around these people like it's a normal occurrence.
Yeah, all of this felt very, very normal. It wasn't like anything out of the ordinary was happening. But yeah, so we just continued down our journey to go to that Tsukiji fish market. And we ended up getting off at the wrong station. So that's another thing that you want to make sure you double check. Make sure you're getting off at the closest station, especially if you're going in August, because the weather is almost unbearable. So hot, so humid. Within 5-6 steps out of the metro station, you're pouring with sweat.
Right.
So we ended up with a 40-minute walk to Tsukiji, but honestly, it was well worth it. It was easily the best part of the trip for me, at least.
When we arrived to the market, it was kind of empty. Honestly, like, we were a little bit confused because we were like, did we get here too late? Like, because it's 5 a.m. and I know you found some stuff online that talked about it, like,
yeah.
It seemed as if, like, you need to get there at, like, 3 a.m.
Yeah, I think that there was, like, Tokyo seems like it has a lot of, like, things that you have to know exactly where they're at to get in, like, a lot of hidden stuff. I read online there was some place that you should stay, like, wait in line at, like, 3 a.m. I think it might have been, like, the actual fish market itself where they sell the fish. I'm not sure, but we didn't really see a lot of that when we got there around 6 or 7 a.m. We saw a lot of people setting up for the day, and we ended up just going to, like, this big kind of, I think it was a chain sushi place, but it was absolutely amazing. It was easily the best sushi either of us have ever had.
I mean, by the time we got there, it was like 7 a.m. and the restaurant, so we got in and there was a wait.
Right, it was like 7
a.m. And between the time that we got sat at our table and getting in the restaurant, there was like a line out the door.
Yeah, they were waiting down the whole block. The whole block was just covered in people, and this was a chain place. We saw like 3 or 4 of these in Tsukiji. It must be like a pretty popular chain. But then they sit you down at the table and they give you like an iPad, and you just pick what you want. And so we did like through 2 or 3 courses of sushi. We tried a couple different types of tuna, some salmon, swordfish. I think we tried, and just a lot of different things. And I think it ended up coming up to like $15 US total, which I thought was a really great deal. And then so after the fish market, we still had like 10 or 12 hours, but honestly, we were feeling like disgusting and exhausted, and so we were just like, you know what, let's just call it good and head back to the airport, especially because we flew into Haneda, but we were flying out of Narita, and so we were like, let's just get there, get a shower in, and wait for our flight for Bangkok. And so that's exactly what we did. We got back on the metro, headed over to Tokyo Station, which is super big, and we took the bus from Tokyo Station directly to Narita Airport. And yeah, the bus was super cheap, super comfortable, a little bit confusing though. Like all the public transit in Tokyo, if you speak Japanese, I'm sure it's incredibly easy. But if you don't, it gets a little bit tricky at times. After we got to Narita, we got some showers. They have this little shower room, and it's like $3 or $4 each. I got refreshed. Yeah, and then we just got on our plane, and now we're here in Bangkok.